Hi everyone, thanks for coming to today's Safe Church Action Plan training meeting. Please make sure you've signed in at the back. You can do that at the end if you haven't, just so that we have a complete record of everyone who's attended today's training. So make sure that you are sitting with the children's or youth program you volunteer with, and if there are groups that have more than 3 or 4 people and some groups that have less, then maybe it's okay if we just kind of mix up a little bit. All of the information is going to be reviewed and shared at the end. So if someone wants to join Cornerstone on the boys club and they're all by themselves like you. All right. Excellent. So what is that group that's missing there, Dan? There's an empty row. What group is it? Ward/youth. Okay.
Yeah.
Could I have 2 of the people from Really Long Children's Church Row go and join that? Go and be that group. I know that you're not on the board or the youth potentially, but all the information is the same. It applies to everyone. I just wanted to have you guys working together in your groups, but if we can have some.
Is the board like the church board?
Yeah, the church board, or we volunteer with you. Yeah. Just so we have a couple of people in each of the slots, that would be great. Perfect. Thank you. Okay, so there will be time for questions afterwards. So if you come up with a question or you're unsure about something, if you can keep those for the end at that time, that will help us to stay on time for today's meeting. And if you attended last year's training meeting, a lot of this information will be familiar to you, and that's a good thing because we want everyone to have a good sense of what we do and how we do things in our children's and youth programs at Cornerstone. There are a couple of new items, and we'll point those out as we go. So let's get started. It's not working. Sorry. All right. So we all know that children and youth can be at risk for abuse and harm anywhere. We also know that children can be put at risk for harm when churches and organizations fail to properly develop and enforce adequate policies to protect the children and youth in their programs. The implementation and consistent adherence to a thorough screening process and the consistent enforcement of strict supervision standards are going to protect the children and youth participating in programs at Cornerstone. These policies minimize.
Like that, Juliana?
Okay.
Because you're kind of cutting in and out.
Nope. Okay. These policies minimize the potential for situations where abuse is possible and will also protect the church if there are any investigations due to allegations of abuse or risk leading to abuse, if those are made. So for some background information, there we go. According to Statistics Canada, 30% of Canadians have reported experiencing physical or sexual abuse as a child. And of course, we all know that abuse in any form, but especially sexual abuse, is always underreported, so probably that number is actually higher. The Canadian Red Cross states that 85% of child sexual abuse victims know their abuser. And Statistics Canada reports that 25% of violence against a child is committed by a family member. Perhaps of importance and particular interest for us here at Cornerstone is the fact that statistically speaking, violence rates against children, both by family and non-family members, are actually twice as high in smaller and rural communities than they are in larger cities. So because of the sad reality of child abuse in our society, the long-lasting trauma it creates, and the realization that children can be put at risk for harm when churches don't establish and follow adequate screening and supervision standards, Cornerstone is committed to following a careful screening process and implementing strict standards for the supervision of all children's and youth programs. So we created and implemented our Safe Church Action Plan last year after many months of research and work in collaboration with Dan and Stacy, and we can now confidently say that it meets industry standards and it has the approval of the church leadership. This is now mandatory training for all Cornerstone staff and volunteers who help with the children's and youth programs. And if someone who meets those criteria isn't here today, then we'll follow up with them and provide that training for them. We've also created summaries for each of the children's and youth programs that contain all of the information can see, it is not insignificant in size. It's full of information that's good information and important information for us to all know and be aware of. But I understand that could be a bit daunting for you to have to flip through. So we've created these summaries for each of the specific children's and youth programs. And so I pulled out in point form the points that are relevant for your program. So we have one for nursery, one for children's church, one for youth, and one for kids midweek programs. Those are available at the back, and we do ask at the end that you take one home with you for whichever program that you volunteer with, and make sure that you read it. Okay, so before we get started with the rest, I wanted to, here we go over our roles and definitions, but hopefully by now these are familiar to everyone. Just so everyone's on the same page and we're all clear, the ministry coordinators are responsible for overseeing their programs, curriculum and volunteers and scheduling, and also for ensuring that their programs, procedures, and volunteers meet the standards in our Safe Church Action Plan. The Children's Church Floater is an adult volunteer who will remain in the hall between the Children's Church classrooms and the nursery, or who may come up to the lobby as long as they also periodically go down that hall and can check in on the classes. This person will help to ensure that the classrooms are properly staffed by chatting with the teachers at the beginning of Children's Church and at least once or twice more during the class time. And they are there to provide support to the volunteers as needed. The Safe Church Action Plan Administrator is responsible for the development, implementation, and enforcement of the Safe Church Action Plan policies and procedures. And I provide support to the ministry coordinators to ensure the proper screening and supervision for all of their programs. I am responsible also for reviewing the policy each year and for being the resource person to you guys, the ministry coordinators and the volunteers. So if you ever have a situation where you're not sure what is the correct way to approach it, or you're not sure what should have happened, you can easily come find me, and if it's something that can be found easily in the policy, I'll point that out to you, we'll go over that. If it's something that maybe I need to take up to Dan and Stacy, and we need to have a conversation about what should we do in this situation, we'll do that, and then we'll get back to you. So we are committed to implementing a thorough screening process for all staff and volunteers that are helping with children and youth here at Cornerstone. This comprehensive screening process is an important part of how we safeguard and protect the children and youth participating in our programs. I'm just going to briefly list the steps. I won't be going into depth and detail, but that is available in the Safe Church Action Plan that you can look through later if you would like. First, we have a 3-month waiting period before applicants are able to volunteer with children and youth. This is to deter individuals who are looking for easy access to potential victims. And also, it gives us in the congregation and in the church leadership time and opportunity to get to know these individuals a little bit before we consider allowing them to volunteer for children and youth. Each applicant must complete a volunteer application form. Applicants will read and agree to adhere to our Safe Church Action Plan policy. And to do that, this is a large document. They are able to just read through the summary for their program, that's fine. You will complete a level 3 police records check for the vulnerable sector, and that's completed before you are going to be allowed to volunteer with children and youth. That has to be done specifically for Cornerstone. So if you've already completed one for another organization or your kids' school or hockey, unfortunately we do require that you do complete one just for Cornerstone, and that has to be done again every 3 years. Applicants will have a brief interview and we'll check with 2 references for each applicant. There will be mandatory training on the Safe Church Action Plan that will be provided annually, which is today, and there will be program-specific training that will be provided by the ministry coordinators for their program considering regarding their curriculum, their procedures and policies, etc. And then lastly, the Cornerstone will retain records for all documents involved in the screening process, attendance records, and any reports submitted. Okay, so right now we're going to break down into our small group discussion time. So you have to be, on the question sheet, you are assigned a small particular section for your group. So So we are asking for you and your group to just review those sections and discuss them. And then if you can briefly summarize the main point or the main idea of that section, and then you guys will present a brief summary of 4 minutes or less to everyone else, so that way everyone gets a quick overview of the different policy points. So we're going to have about 10 minutes for you guys to read through that and discuss that and come up with the points that you're going to present, and then we will begin our discussion. Alright everyone, we're going to have to wrap up our discussion time and get ready for our presentations. Even if you haven't finished yet, we'll make sure that the points are covered. So when you read presentations, try to make sure that you cover the questions that you have, the sections that you have, and try to briefly summarize the main points and ideas of your sections. Everyone please listen, so that we can all learn from each other. We'll have to keep the presentations to 4 minutes or less. I don't know, Dan, if you want to set a timer. And we're going to go in the order of your group number, so that way you can be prepared. Alright, so group number 1.
Yeah. Yes, please, you can come up.
Alright, we had chapter 2, sections 1 to 6. We spent most of our time on the first 2 points, so we didn't really get it through, but in quick summary, first point we had was 2-leader rule. Again, it comes down to something very simple. Never one adult by themselves in a classroom with kids. Never a situation where an adult can think that they have time with kids alone. So there's a floater around that covers it. The floater has to come by regularly. This blends in with section 2.2 with an open door policy with the floater again. We're teaching as a classroom, there shouldn't be a time when I can think I'm in a room by myself without a chance for an adult to come by and see what I'm doing with the kids, essentially is what it is. So there has to be another adult in there. The adult can't be my wife. It has to be a non-related person. In our Sunday school classes, we use a volunteer who's older than the kids there. That's the next policy, we'll get to that. And again, it comes down to one of the sentences here. It says, it is important to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. So it's what you have to do has to be super vigilant of this chance that somebody else could say, well, your adult was in there and nobody knows what that adult was doing. The counter argument, that would be, well, the adult was in there, but the adult didn't know when the floater was going to walk by. So the window's always open or the door is always open. The floater has to be in the hall so that they can come by and check randomly to see what we're doing, just to make sure that what we're doing is appropriate at all times. The next one is, again, staffing guidelines. Staffing guidelines simply deals with how many staff has to be present with the age group. So with kindergartens or nursery, it has to be 1 to 4. A little bit older is 1 to 6. And with the kids in I teach, it's 1 to 9. So ratios there. It's important, again, and I guess with these things here, it's always a temporary time. If somebody has to go to the bathroom, we need to get the parents to get the kids to go pee before church. That way you don't have to go to the bathroom during Sunday school. And in the rare event that it does, then the door is open, and that's where we make use of the floater. Family protection. Spouses work well together, but it doesn't count as far as the different unrelated adults. So it's wonderful if your wife or husband wants to be there and help you teach, you still need an unrelated adult supervisor. Age leader considerations. This basically covers who's considered old enough to be a teacher. There has to be an age gap between the students and the teacher. Youth leaders have to be at least 3 years older than the group of youth they're leading, and it goes on to talk about that. Staff and volunteer identification. We have to have a name tag on that says who we are and what we're doing. And that basically takes me to the end of my section.
So group number 2.
He basically covered all our points.
Okay, so
Yes,
group number 2.
Good job.
I did want to just go over the floater as well, that it's, yes, it's important for an extra adult there to be a presence so that we avoid any sense of impropriety, as you said. But also the floater is there to support you. So if you have a child who is upset or who got hurt, and you need to go get a parent, or if you have a child who urgently needs to use the bathroom, then we can make use of the floater that way. So it's the two different roles that floater needs. All right, so group number 2 was also supervision guidelines. Is there anyone from that group who is, that's for next one. Is there anyone from that group who is ready to present? Because they were different sections.
Go,
No?
Anya.
Remember?
Well, we didn't really have any meetings.
Okay.
I don't really know if that.
Okay, I'll go over it quickly. So the supervision guidelines in the manual is a fairly big section because we have different points that we need to cover. The main points are we need to have the children registered properly at the beginning of the fall program. So for children's church or nursery or youth or midweek, we need to be taking attendance in our morning services. That needs to be the kids that are present as well as the volunteers that are present, and that's a permanent record. Nursery and kinder to grade 1 class, the kids have to be signed in by their parent and also be signed in by their parent. They are not able to be picked up by another family member or a visiting aunt or uncle or grandparent or cousin. That just eliminates the situations where you might not be familiar with this person. And maybe, this person comes to you and says, hey, I'm here to pick up Jack, but you're not really familiar with them. So this is our fallback. We're only allowed to release these kids of this age to their parents, and they are indicated on their registration forms. Washroom guidelines, as a general rule for nursery and for kids that are in toilet training, the parents need to take their kids to the bathroom right before the class time. And then if there is a child who does need to use the bathroom, our guidelines are that we're just going to say adult females are going to be the ones who are going to be assisting any little ones in the bathroom. And a main point is just to leave the washroom door open. In the manual, it specifies for little kids who actually physically need help in the washroom stall, you're able to go in there, but leave the stall door open. If it's a kid who just needs help washing their hands or needs you to help, pull their shirt up or something, then you can go and assist them, but you stay out in the washroom while they are in the stall. And for older kids, even kids that are old enough that they don't need help, we need our volunteers to go with them, pop your head into the washroom facility just to take a check and see who's present, and then wait outside. You don't need to assist them in any way, you don't need to have a door open. It's just so that you are aware of the situation that you are putting that child in. And then also so they know that you're there if for some reason they need help. Mobile devices are to be turned off or put away when you're using the bathroom, so there's no potential for you to be accidentally recording any images or anything while you're in there. And then we've covered that for elementary age, You check the bathroom and you wait outside the hall. We need to have parent permission before you begin any personal ministry or counseling. For special events, they need to be pre-approved by the ministry coordinator. You need to have the parents fill in a waiver form, and you need to have a minimum of 2 leaders. Overnight events, the staffing ratio is smaller, 1 to 5. If there are female children participating or youth, then you need to have at least 1 female leader who's an adult. And then also in that situation, you would have volunteers that are assigned specific groups of children just to help manage who is supervising who. All right, group 3, nursery.
Yay, Isabella! Woo! Yay! Our topic is about nursery procedures. So I'm going to focus this on here. Young helpers that are 11 or 12 years old may also volunteer in the nursery, but do not count towards appropriate staffing issue. At least one volunteer is to be an adult female volunteer. It is never acceptable to compromise child protection due to volunteer shortage. People are other than parents or guardians in the nursery, volunteers or staff are not to enter the nursery. What? Oh, okay. Maintain one adult per 4 children, minimum staffing ratios.
Super fun.
Just some other points. Authorized adult or parent to pick up their child. Child must be signed in or signed out because we kind of overlapped. The volunteer for nursery, we had a discussion last year about how to do this, and we settled on that we're going to have, in the nursery, we're going to have you ask the young volunteer, the young helper, come to the sanctuary, find the parents, and take their kid. Okay? And diapering, we are not expecting our Cornerstone volunteers to change a diaper. So even if outside of church, you've changed this kid's diaper before, when we're here, when you're in this role, Cornerstone volunteers don't change diapers. Okay? Second group for nursery.
So our section was on proper display of affection and appropriate behaviors. So, in summary, in everything that lists, the real key point there is that positive touch is essential to development. So, it's okay to touch as long as your touch is appropriate. And when deciding what's appropriate, it's important to consider the development of the child. So, for nursery, we're often dealing with babies. It's fine to carry them and snuggle them if they're sad. And you need to make a judgment call at what point is that kid able to walk. Then you don't really need to pick them up, and what kind of touching you're having. So patting them on the head is fine. Touching them on the shoulder to direct their attention or to console them is fine. And as a general rule, anything covered by a bathing suit is off limits all the time. There's no reason that you should be that close or be touching in that way. So taking a hand, patting a head, holding a child who's upset is okay. Some key things that are always inappropriate: coaxing a child to give kisses. You should never be doing that. If they volunteer a hug, it's fine to accept it. And always consider what's developmentally appropriate. For a lot of the other ages, these kids will be a lot older and they'll make a lot of those judgment calls on their own, whether they want to give a hug or a high five.
Great, thank you. So, group number 5, Boys Club. So, Boys Club volunteers.
Okay, so the sections that I'm reviewing are proper discipline and difficult situations, and so this applies to everyone, not just midweek or anything like that. So the understanding is that healthy discipline helps children develop self-control, learn responsible behavior, and they can actually participate appropriately in the program. And so there are appropriate discipline procedures and then unacceptable ones, so not just inappropriate, but actually unacceptable. So some of the appropriate ones, praise, getting down to the child's eye level. I know I try to do that, but I forget sometimes, so it's something that maybe is not the first one. Use a firm, gentle voice, redirecting negative behavior. You can use a gentle touch on the shoulder and help talk through the problem, explain what's not acceptable, and offer a positive alternative. And then you could use age-appropriate timeouts if you need to from the activities. So the suggestion is maybe 1 minute per year of age. And then you can discuss it if necessary with the parents. Unacceptable ones: corporal punishment of any kind, physical restraining the children, except if you're trying to prevent them harm, either to themselves or someone else. Raising your voice unless you're doing it to be heard. Using negative, hurtful, or derogatory comments, which sometimes you can say and not really realize that it's negative or hurtful, embarrassing or shaming the child, or isolating or excluding them from the group. So that would be obviously separate from a timeout that they know is coming. So the thing is, you can do these appropriate discipline procedures, and it might not work. So what do you do? What do you do if it doesn't work? Basically, you have to ask another volunteer or the floater children's church to go and find the parent or guardian. So Dan joined me briefly, and we were talking about how for the midweek, we don't always have that information easily available, so we should make sure that the ministry coordinators have that information and provide it to the people who are there. And obviously the sign-in, I think there are places for people to put phone numbers, but if it's like the 8th week, they may not write their phone number for the 8th time. So, but anyway, the idea is someone accesses or finds the parent or guardian, then you ask the parent or guardian to remove their child or youth from the class or activity, so you're not the one removing them, and then you explain why they're being asked to leave, but you also state that the child is welcome to return once they're able to participate in a more cooperative manner. And then, like when you're trying to do the healthy discipline in the first place, don't shame or embarrass the child or the parent or guardian.
Thank you. Okay, group number 6, /youth.
Yay! So we had understanding child abuse, essentially just that there are 4 types: physical harm or injury, emotional harm, sexual abuse or exploitation, or negligent treatment. There were some details underneath each of those categories of abuse. Most of them are common sense, and one of our questions was there anything new that came up in these descriptors or definitions, and not really. So under physical abuse, using physical force or action that could result or has resulted in injury to the child, that can include just being negligent such that there is some physical harm to the child. Under emotional abuse, in part it talks about a pattern of behavior, but really if you read about the what would qualify as emotional abuse, acting or failing to act in ways that could have a serious behavioral or emotional, mental impact on the child's health. That includes things like placing unreasonable demands on a child, or expecting them to be capable of something beyond their capacity. So verbal threats against them, social isolation, intimidating, criticizing, belittling, insulting, and rejecting. So even though that was the part we discussed, even though it does talk about a pattern of abuse, one strong verbal threat I think would be enough to qualify as abuse in that case, whether it's a pattern or not. In sexual abuse, any sexual exploitation or treatment of a child or youth, that any sexual activity without consent is criminal offense regardless of age, but that at 16 years of age they are able to give consent, unless it's in a case where someone is in a place of authority or trust, which would include any of our programs. The last piece, there's 3 more bullet points about children and youth are legally protected from sexual abuse. So that kind of leads more to the supervision that we provide within our programs, that we ensure that they are protected from even sexual violence. Doesn't include physical contact, for example, being forced to look at sexual parts of another person's body, being asked intrusive questions or comments made about their body would qualify under that. So even if that's not something you're personally involved in doing, if we're in the environment to protect the children, we have to be aware that you are protecting them from anybody who might be making those types of comments or actions. The last piece of abuse, or last type of abuse, would be negligence or negligent treatment, and that's the failure to care or provide for the child, or to fail to adequately supervise.
That's not only it. If you look at the bottom, there's also, like, they might be doing self-harming or hostile behavior, fear. So that there's also behavioral things there that you might see from if they're physically abused. And a lot of the time, like, people aren't dumb. If they're going to physically abuse kids, they're not going to do it in places that you're going to see. So you might notice the behavior more than the scars or bruising. So pay attention for that. The next thing is emotional abuse. And I mean, like it's basically it's negative behavior. It's kind of common sense. Like depression, self-harming again, eating disorders. And so especially if you're dealing with youth like I am, or the older kids, some of this stuff is just how teenagers behave. So I think a lot of it's going to be like a shift in like, well, last week this kid was awesome and they were super happy, and now they're depressed, and now like and they're just sliding downwards. Then pay attention to that. And then sexual abuse, again, a lot of the same stuff. So you kind of got to pay attention to what's different, and I mean, if you notice any of these things, that should shoot up a flag is really the point. And yeah, I mean, it's all there. You should definitely read them. And then the last one, I guess there's another slide, was neglect. And this isn't something that I really thought about, but it's things like failure to thrive, inappropriate dress for the climate, chronic hunger, depression. So, and I mean, like, poor hygiene. So again, this could be any teenage boy who has terrible hygiene and they're always hungry and they don't wear the right clothes. But pay attention to that. If it's like one of my kids, they run hot. Like Hudson never wants to wear his shoes. He'd probably wear shorts and a t-shirt all year long. That would be his dream. And we have to force that kid into a coat. Or but like, if last winter, well, this kid had a coat every day, and now they have nothing, and they're wearing shoes with holes in it, like, pay attention to that stuff. I think that's all of our things.
Thank you, that's great. And I really like that you guys pointed out that look for changes, because there's some of these behaviors, I mean, some kids and some teens do fall into a depression, just like some adults do. It's not necessarily a sign that there's something that we should be worried about beyond just being worried for their mental health and emotional well-being. But if you look for these changes and sudden changes in their behavior, someone was really engaged and happy and outgoing, and then all of a sudden you start to notice that they're withdrawn and they're shy, they don't want to be really active and participating, or they're kind of, hunched over a little bit, and maybe they're dressed completely differently, especially for girls. That could be a red flag, that if they dress in a certain way, like full of personality, and they kind of have their sense of style, and then all of a sudden they start dressing in really oversized, baggy clothes and trying to hide and cover their bodies. Again, that's not a sign that something actually did happen, but as Nathan said, it's a flag. Pay attention, and it's a cause for us to kind of step in and just express concern for the child. All right, so we have next group, Children's Church, Group 8.
Our section was on understanding disclosure, which kind of ties in a little bit with what Nathan said. So most often, children won't disclose until after an extended period of abuse, or even more so after the abuse is ended, and there'll be a lot of inconsistencies in the facts. So the timing may be different, the people may be different, the duration of the abuse, and we have to understand that can be due to trauma or fear, and not to not believe the child, even if the facts don't make sense. They may alter them on purpose or in error. They may say it happened to a friend of theirs. They may say that somebody abused them, but not the actual person that did. So there's a lot of subtle signs to look for. And then big things, they may show nonverbal signs, like Nathan just reviewed. In the section that we read, they didn't actually lay them out. I mean, yours were more specific to teens, but I've seen a lot of this in my own life growing up. And a child will want to tell, but they're really afraid. They're afraid that they won't be believed. They are not too sure who they can trust because they've already been abused by somebody that they did trust. They may be afraid that it will break up a family or a family friendship. And they don't want to get a family member or a friend in trouble. They may be afraid, they may be in denial of what happened or think that that's normal behavior. within those circumstances. They may be very embarrassed, and they may hint at the abuse to a friend or a trusted adult. Often they'll tell a teacher, somebody further removed, and that doesn't just happen, like that's not just a talk. I think all of this isn't, and I wasn't here last year for this, but not just about abuse that might happen here, but about reporting abuse that we've got to watch for. And in my experience, it usually is their friends know.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, our last group, Group 9, Girls Club.
So we looked at a few different sections kind of tied into all of these. So when it comes to dealing with the inappropriate behavior and reporting the behavior and talking about injuries, what do we do with all of that? So when we're talking about inappropriate conduct of allegedly by the volunteers and the people who are dealing with our children, we are to quietly remove the volunteer from the situation and to then report to our ministry coordinator and also to our lead pastor so that we can deal with the situation. So next we're talking about accidents and reporting them. So there's kind of like common sense, you go through different stages. Child comes to you, they've got a cut on their finger, they just need a Band-Aid. I don't think we need to report at that point, but one question that our group did have is if we have to open a first aid kit, do we have to report it at that point? Next is if the injury is a little bit more serious, you then need to look at if you need to call 911. You also need to ensure the safety of the child or children involved. You need to get in touch with the children's parents. You also need to, in that situation, do we need to separate the children who are involved in the incident and remove the rest of them from everyone else so you can deal with the situation quietly? Should you cancel and have parents come and pick their children up earlier so you can continue to help the child or children involved in the situation? After ensuring the safety of the child or children involved, you need to complete an accident report so that we can submit it to our ministry coordinator and also to the lead pastor so that they're aware of what's happening and they can help us deal with the situation accordingly. Next is reporting procedures and staff volunteer inappropriate conduct. So again, this is if you notice something that is not how you would view the appropriate way to deal with children. There's a few things that we look at, like losing your temper, raising your voice angrily, shaming, belittling the child, acting physically aggressive or threatening with the child, inappropriate or unsafely isolating the child, touching the child inappropriately or with too much familiarity or in a romantic manner, or otherwise conducting themselves in a manner not in keeping with the behavior guidelines outlined in this policy. So your first step is to immediately ask and to stop. Your second step is to report the inappropriate conduct. Next, you want to inform the ministry coordinator. Then you want to submit a report of inappropriate conduct. And then from there, the ministry coordinator is not available. Then you would get in touch with the lead pastor. So all of these steps, all of this section that we're touching on is super important for us as leaders and volunteers to know, so that way when, and never, hopefully never, but if we're ever in this situation, we know what we need to do. So reporting procedures, every person is required by law to make a report immediately to CAS, so Children's Aid Society. So if you're noticing, like in what Nathan was talking about, if you're noticing changes in behavior, if you're seeing abuse, if you're suspecting even There's nothing stopping you, and we are required to make sure that we're making that phone call to ensure the child's safety. You don't need to be 100% certain in any case. You just, if there is a suspicion there, that is motivation enough. If you witness it occurring or you have been informed, it is our job to intervene to protect the children. If you do happen to see it physically, right, you don't want to leave the abuser with the child, so try and separate them. Remove the child from the situation and make that report. Cornerstone requires that you make a report if you suspect abuse and the child is under the age of 18. Complete a report of possible child abuse and submit to the lead pastor. And from there, again, this is all stuff that's in here for you guys to read over. And I feel it's very important for us to know.
Thank you, April. That's great. So, just as a follow-up to that, I wanted to show you what the forms look like. You fill in your name and the date at the top. Capture and complete as much information as you can. Maybe not all of the questions on the sheet are relevant to that specific situation. That's fine. Just complete it as much as you can. And then you submit it to your ministry coordinator at once you've completed this information. Try to do that as quickly as possible. Perhaps there's something that we need to know, that maybe we need to change how we do things or change the physical environment that was happening in, so that we prevent future accidents or injuries from happening like that. This is the report.
Where are those kept?
Of inappropriate conduct. All the forms are in the filing cabinet in Stacy's office, in the office, as also with the summaries, with the hard copies of the manuals. That's all there. I'm sure we could pop in afterwards if you wanted to see. It's in a red folder, I believe, that's labeled Safe Church Action Plan. I think it's the second drawer. Report of inappropriate conduct. Please fill in your name and the date at the top. Complete it as much as you can. Capture as much information as you can. So this could be if you saw something that was inappropriate, or if someone told you something that was inappropriate that happened that they saw or that happened to them, or even if you just think something happened, okay? This is not like you're reporting someone for abusing a child. This is, hey, I'm not sure about this situation. I'm uncomfortable with it. Maybe someone needs to look into it. Again, fill in as much information as you can and hand that in to the ministry coordinator. This is the report of possible child abuse. Again, name and date at the top. For this one, please do the best that you can to capture as much information as you can. For the youth or the child that was a victim, we need first and last names. For any other children that were present or people that might be witnesses, first and last names, we can follow up with them. Please use exact quotes from the children or youth as much as you can. On the back of this form, there are blank body figures here. I call them body charts. There's a side that says front and a side that says back. This is for you to indicate on these forms the areas that you saw indicators, physical indicators of possible abuse or neglect. Or you could have the child point it out. If the child is telling you something, you're like, can you show me on this, like where that happened and where you were touched or where this body part got hurt? And then they could point and then you can mark that on. It's just for us to be as thorough as we can in gathering information so that we can hand that off to CIS and they can carry that on, okay? And then you hand this in to the lead pastor. All right, so these are your legal requirements. April got into them a little bit, but we'll go over them because they are really important. So if you, as an adult, saw the abuse, had someone disclose to you the abuse, or you think a child is being abused or will be abused, then you are required to make a report to the Children's Aid Society of Ottawa. You do not need to be certain of the facts in order to make that report. You don't need to wait and gather more information or confer with someone else or wait and check again with the kid. It's just you are making a report that you think there's a kid who needs protection, and then they will do the investigating. You do not need to rely on anyone else to make that report for you. So you, as a volunteer leader, are not to come to me, or Dan, or Nathan, or Grace, or Shannon, or the ministry coordinator, and say, hey, this happened, or I heard this, or I saw this. I think that we need to call Children's Aid Society. Can you do that? It is your responsibility. If you are kind of the contact person, you're the person who has that suspicion or has that information, then that is your responsibility. No one is able to prevent you from making a report to Children's Aid Society if you have a genuine worry that there's a child who might be in need of protection. So, when responding to a child who is disclosing abuse, please remember that victims of abuse can suffer subsequent trauma when they are not believed or when nothing is done to stop their abuser. A child may or may not disclose the abuse right away. They might not tell you all the facts about their abuse, and they might not remember and disclose the facts in the correct chronological order in which they occurred. And as Penny pointed out, that's not a sign that they're making it up. It's just how fear and trauma works on the brain. Remember that the child does not have the power in an abusive situation. So this is what we ask you to do. Stay calm, control your personal reaction to the news, show concern but do not express feelings of shock or disbelief or denial or anything that they can misunderstand as you not believing them. Take them seriously and believe the child. Tell the child that what happened was not their fault. Acknowledge what they've experienced and what they're feeling. Comfort them, try to ensure their safety. Do not interview or question a child in depth or ask for specific details. Be careful that you don't suggest words for the child to use to describe what happened, but allow the child to describe what he or she experienced in his or her own words, and record those exact quotes when you can. They know, especially with some younger kids, they don't have the vocabulary, or they don't have the understanding, or maybe they have kind of like pet names for body parts. So it's not our place to interject, oh, so you mean this happened? Oh, so that means that that person did that to you. Just allow them to use their own words and write those down. And when we call in CAS, we have a record of exactly what the child said, and it is up to those trained professionals then to interview the child. That is not your job.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
So I know a couple of families personally that have had teachers or community members call CAS, and I don't think it's the end of the world. I think that if something was happening to our child or our relative or friends, we would want CAS to do it. In a couple of circumstances, it was completely unmerited, but they are very well trained at deciphering that. I mean, they see children in all kinds of circumstances every day. And also the part where you talked about don't feel like you have to go talk to somebody else. You know, that person may or may not know the family well. And our children will also know that this is a small community. And you said, you know, it does happen more in small communities. And I assume that it's less reported because people know each other very well. CAS is the police don't do the investigation, CAS does the investigation, and their people are trained well. And I think it's really important that any little suspicion does get reported. They'll figure it out, we don't have to.
Excellent, yes, Jillian.
I just thought your point about, I know the onus is on whoever was disclosed to or witnessed the abuse, but it can be really hard to call in.
Yes.
So having the ministry leader or the pastor or someone sit in on your conversation is perfectly fine. I know we do that at school, that the principal will sit in just to support the teacher who's having to make that difficult call.
That's an excellent point. Okay, so she was saying that, I'm just going to repeat it for our video here, that even though the onus is on you as a person who has received that disclosure or witnessed the situation, that is your personal responsibility to call CAS in. Just the realization that that's a difficult call, a difficult situation, and you are probably like shocked or stunned or really upset as well. And so it's perfectly fine to call in either a ministry coordinator or Dan or someone from the church leadership just to be a support to you as you're in that situation, making that call to CAS. And so that's a great point. And yes, as Penny said, we shouldn't worry about calling CAS. And I think I forget what the actual number is, but it's a high percentage of the cases that CAS is called for where they close the investigation because it's unmerited or it's not severe enough to warrant any further action. And that's fine. You're only reporting that you are concerned for the welfare of this child, and then just leave it to the professionals who are trained, well-trained and practiced at doing this.
Would you be on record as the person who reported, or is that done anonymously?
Oh,
Okay, Shannon.
No, I wanted to share as a family who has had CAS call on us two to three times. Not in our new community, but in our previous community. And I think I would just like to draw attention that sometimes using common sense and maybe getting to know the family a little bit if a child's been coming for 8 nights and kind of like Nathan said, looking for a pattern, looking at the age of the child. I know our situation was a little bit different, at ages 4, 5, and 6. In the previous community we lived in, we had people who were against adoption. They didn't think it was a way to form a family. They thought kids coming from foster care were bad seeds, kind of that type of thing. So we actually ended up with teachers and with volunteers in different programs that were specifically looking for things that they could call CAS about. They knew these kids were with us for placements, and maybe they didn't want them in their community. They're bad seeds. Now, I don't think we actually have any kids that come to our programs that would, in my assessment, fit into this kind of category, but the amount of pain and hurt that my husband and I felt in those situations is, obviously, it's still with me. And as great as CAS are at doing their jobs, it really can absolutely rip a family apart. I think Katie's here today, and she can attest to this, and I'm okay talking about it with her here, because we talk about it a lot as a family, but I think my concern kind of more comes from the neglect and emotional side, and if, say, a child comes, one time to girls' club, I didn't have supper before I came. Don't call CAS.
Yeah.
It may be that the child was running late, and the parents said, you need to eat, and they didn't eat. They come without shoes, or a coat. We use natural consequences. You left your coat somewhere, it's in the lost and found box, I'm going to drop you off, you have to go find your coat. Kind of those things, right? Use your common sense. I'll share willingly, we just had a call from the school a couple weeks ago. Katie had wrote in a note, I want to kill myself. We got a call, CAS is involved now, actively in our lives. So I guess, in our current community we have it. Police are involved. We've all talked to Katie, she has no suicide ideations. You know what it was? A friend of hers didn't want to work with her on something, it was girl drama, that's it, you don't want to be my friend, I just want to kill myself. There's a really big difference. However, now we're dealing with social workers, we're dealing with CAS, we're dealing with police. So sometimes use the common sense, never hesitate to call. When you do call it in, you are reporting it by name to CAS, but when they speak to the family about it, you're anonymous. So don't let that prevent you from reporting. I find in many cases, we've been able to pinpoint exactly who it was that called in without knowing their name. So, but don't prevent that from letting you call it in, right? I mean, if we're calling in something for Girls Club, they know there's only 3 of us leaders, so it was one of us who did it. Chances are we just will never see that kid back in our program. That's what will happen.
Thank you.
Oh, yes.
I just have a question on the ambiguity of saying do not question for specifics, and yet there's pictures requiring specifics.
Yeah. Well, it's a fine line between giving the child or the youth the opportunity to, in a safe space, say, okay, I'm concerned about you, or I hear what you're saying, or I've seen this happen. Giving them a safe space, an opportunity to come to you as a trusted adult, and say, okay, this is what happened to me. You might be the only person that they might crack open that door with. But we want to be careful that we're not professionally trained investigators. We're not, we don't have that practice and that training, and we don't ever want to plant seeds in kids' heads. Sometimes kids come out with things that to someone else sounds different than what they actually mean. So it is a fine line of, we're not pushing for information, we're not planting seeds and putting words in their mouths, we're not changing their stories in any way or altering it. We're not even if what they actually describe to you is actual whatever it is, don't give them that word. We just want to capture their own information from their own words. And then if they are able to, so you are to mark on those body charts what you saw or what you witnessed or what you think you saw. If the child is actively coming to you and trusting you and disclosing to you, then you can have that opportunity to just ask general open-ended questions. I wouldn't say, okay, so you were sexually abused, exactly what got put where, okay? But we would say something like, okay, so I hear what you're saying, can you just point to this picture and point where you were touched? Something that would be general and open-ended, and the child or the youth can then step into that question and then feel free, if they're comfortable, to disclose those details to you. They might just kind of back up and say, oh, no, or they just might not want to take that step with you, and that's fine. But I think we do want to give them the opportunity, if they are showing trust in you and they kind of open that door, or if you open that door by saying, hey, Sally, I've seen some things and I'm concerned about you. Can you tell me about this? You're not going to say, hey, I see what looks like scars. Were you cut? Or, did you get in a fight? I think, hopefully, we never have this happen, and we are never in a situation where we are asking our kids these questions. But I think just being aware of giving them that space and opportunity to disclose to you if they're comfortable and if they're able to, without pushing them and without kind of putting and interjecting our own words and our own vocabulary and our own information into their story. Because it might not be true, it might not be what they actually experienced, or it might be, but that's not up to us to ascertain. Yes, Marcia.
Another ambiguity. Thank you for the word, Sharon. Trying to think of it. So earlier we were told we shouldn't be alone with children, right? Or youth. In this case, I'm guessing the person will come to you alone and begin to confide in you. If it were me, I would ask for a second person to come in and sit in on the discussion, because I think you put yourself at a lot of risk if you take this kind of information alone. That's just a thought I have. I wonder what you think.
But wouldn't that shut down the child? Any possibility of shutting down the child if they feel free to just confide in one person?
Yeah, that's a good point. So a lot of our rooms have windows. So then anyone, parent or volunteer walking by, or staff that's here, could walk by and see, okay, there's an adult along with the child, but they're keeping themselves clearly visible, and sit yourself down kind of right in front of that window. We haven't looked into maybe the best way to do that. I would think that if they're coming to me as a trusted individual, and I say, okay, hold that thought, I'm going to run over here and I'm going to grab Shannon too, because, because I'm worried or something like that. That moment might kind of be gone. Or again, they're coming to me as a trusted adult, not to say they don't trust Shannon, but maybe for whatever reason, they don't have that comfort level with her, or for whatever reason, they just thought, okay, I'm going to grab onto this opportunity to say something right now. That's a good question. If I can, I could look into that and say, what are the best practices for volunteers who are not trained to receive a child's disclosure? Because I hear what you're saying, and we want to also have kind of protection for ourselves and for the church. That is what the kind of open doors and the windows satisfies. But we also want to recognize that it is really hard for a kid to disclose abuse. It is really hard. You have no idea how hard that is. Okay? And so if they are in that moment, sorry, I shouldn't say that, maybe you don't have, I don't know you guys well enough to know that. Maybe, hopefully, most of you do not know how hard that is. And especially as a child to go to an adult and say this is what's happening. As someone mentioned before, usually it will be a friend that will be aware of the situation first before an adult. So I would be really careful with that trust that that child is showing you, and just honor that. So I don't want to say anything without having kind of thought and dug into it a little bit. Can we leave it at that? That maybe that's something that I can research into and see, okay, what are the best practices for that? Because I would hate to kind of prescribe something as the steps to follow just on the seat of my pants, and then find out later, oh, that's actually not the.
I was gonna say, like, this happens all the time, like at youth nights, where they're telling you something of a personal nature, and maybe it's not abuse, but it's something going on in their lives, or they want prayer for something, or they just want to talk about something privately. I mean, either we're in the lounge where you can kind of leave the door open a little bit, but people can see you in the window, or you here in the sanctuary.
Or here in the sanctuary where, you know, there's obviously windows and there's people coming and going, but you're sitting alone together in a pew, but you're in a public space. We're not downstairs in a classroom by ourselves, or, you know, that kind of thing. So you're kind of public, but can still have this intimate conversation, you know, able to, so that's how we get around it.
That's the point I'm making, not to take them into a private room.
Yeah, not to get a private room.
Yeah. Excellent.
Great. Okay, so I think we've finished. Have we done this? Yes. We've finished our disclosure. That was some great discussion, guys. All right. Next.
Our group had a question when we were going through the reporting accidents and injuries, and I just want to make sure we cover it. In section 5.3D, it talks about injuries that are not serious enough to require non-urgent medical care. And then if you try calling the child or his parent or guardian, you don't get any response, but it does warrant some type of medical care. It says, if further medical care is required before the end of time of the class, parents, guardians cannot be reached, then one adult volunteer should take that child or youth to receive medical attention and keep attempting to reach the parents, guardians. This brought up a question for us of, as adult leaders, are we actually permitted to leave this site with a child in our vehicle? I don't think on the forms we have to disclose anything about insurance. There's always that piece of, it would have to be a female volunteer with a same gender, right? So maybe you can address that.
Very good point. I don't have a copy of it with me, but on the child registration form, I believe there is consent to provide care as necessary. I can double check afterwards, but when the parent is registering their child, that is something that they are agreeing to. If my kid falls and breaks his leg, he needs medical attention, because, I mean, yeah, it could just be a break or
it's on there.
Yeah, it's on there. So they are consenting to that. Of course, then, if you are at your maximum staffing ratio and then one of your volunteers leaves, that's not great either. So in that case, I would consider calling another Cornerstone volunteer saying, hey, I've got a situation. Can you step in real quick just to be the volunteer for the last half of this, and I've got to take this kid into the emergency, and keep calling the parent. Say, this is what happened. Leave a message, you know, so there's, and you can get that information to them as soon as possible. But I think that's what we would do in that situation. Yes, Steve?
Shouldn't that simply be? Logically, shouldn't it be, if that person needs to go to emergency now, shouldn't that be 911?
Yeah.
And if it isn't an emergency and the parents, like, the classes aren't covered, if it's a cut that may need stitches in 2 hours, you're going to take 2 hours in the waiting room anyway. So if they wait for another half hour for the parent to come and pick them up, big deal. If it's broken, there's a bone sticking out or something like that, you don't want to drive them anyways. It's not, you're not a first responder, it's not your responsibility to call 911. That's what the ambulance is for. So either the kid can wait for the parent to come, and they can make the decision to drive their kid themselves, or you call 911.
So that is in there as as the steps is that if it is serious enough that it needs urgent medical attention, call 911. That is in there. It's just those situations where, okay, they need medical attention that's non-life-threatening, non-urgent, you don't need to call 911, but it's beyond the basic first aid that we would have here available. So yes, certainly you call the parent in at that time and say, hey, this happened. But I guess if it is kind of nearing the end of the time, yeah, the kid could wait if they've, just got a busted lip or something, but there are some injuries that you don't know how serious they are because we're not medically, well, most of us here are not medically trained professionals. And so we don't want to take that responsibility for saying, I made the judgment call, this kid doesn't need to, he can wait 2 hours and then wait 2 hours in the emergency room. That's a total of 4 hours instead of 2 hours. Okay, or however long it takes to get them to drive over there. So that's just the situation we're trying to avoid is, yeah, if it's minor, just kind of everyday, what would happen at home and you wouldn't call or wouldn't take your child in, you still need to call and let the parents know. Some parents will be, oh yeah, okay, well that's too bad, but if he's okay to stay, yeah, I'll come and pick him up at the end. Some parents are like, I'm coming in right now, I'm gonna come get him, I want to know for myself and I want to make that judgment call. So yeah, call 911 if it's urgent and it needs to be seen and addressed immediately by the paramedics and taken right away to emergency. If it's minor, bumps, scrapes, little cuts, yeah, of course we can just address that here, call and notify the parents. If it's that kind of in-between areas where it's a little bit more gray, is if it's still urgent and you cannot properly assess fully how severe the actual impact of that injury or trauma might be. We just don't want you to be in that position for making that call. Yes,
I'm just wondering, where the contact information will be available for leaders. Sorry.
Where is contact information for parents to be available for leaders to call at a moment's notice? Because last year we had a situation where a teen had a seizure. We called 911, we had to get all the kids out here and we supervised there, we were dealing with it here, waited, but we needed to call her parent to say, this is happening, we called 911, please come. But we took quite a while to find the number. So he arrived just as kind of 5 minutes before the ambulance came, but we need to know as leaders, okay, this has happened or this is happening, what's the number of this parent or guardian? So where do we find that really fast?
So I know for midweek programs, we have a sign-in and the parents leave their phone number, leave their contact information. That should be there. As ministry coordinators, it is not written into this policy, but it is a good idea that you guys, whenever you have an event, that you have that information with you. That you're not looking for church files or trying to look up on the computer or trying to rifle through the registration forms in a binder somewhere that I don't even know where it is right now. So I would recommend, if you are here running an event or you are off-site running an event, you guys as your ministry coordinator who's with you, or if the ministry coordinator is not physically present that night, then he or she hands it off to another volunteer and say, hey, can you be responsible for this? You should have the parents' contact information with you. So I can check with Stacy and see where the registration information is available, and we can certainly pass that out to all the volunteers and the ministry coordinators. But that onus is on the ministry coordinator or the volunteer that is responsible for that night or that activity or that program to say, here's all the contact information for all the parents, and make sure that if you have a new kid join partway through the year, make sure they fill in that registration form and make sure you have that contact information. So we're running short on time. Can it wait?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, every every school teacher goes on a trip. They have that in that folder in their backpack.
Yeah. Okay. So we are going to keep going just so we can get through everything, and then the kids have just been dismissed from the Sunday service to begin children's church. You take your underage kid out to take him to his class, but as you come out, you notice that it seems like there's a lot of kids just waiting around. You send your child ahead of you to go into his class, walk down the hall to check in on the next classroom. Only the young helper is there. There's no teacher and there's no visible sign of any lesson prep. You wait around a few minutes and you see more families and more kids come, but no teacher. You and another parent wonder who the teacher may be and what should you do if the teacher doesn't show up. You've taught children's church before, though not in a while, so you decide you can handle teaching the kids today. As you get the kids to sit down, you see that there's a new family standing, they look puzzled in the doorway. You invite their kids in, ask them their names, and welcome them to the class. The parent asks you if you're the teacher and you have a few questions about children's church. You confess this is your first time teaching, and really you're only stepping in because there was no teacher that morning. They kind of look unsure as they slowly step back into the hall. You turn and notice they have three full tables of kids, so you quickly get their attention with a short story and some games. As the class time ends, you spy a box of cookies in the corner, so you grab it, hand those out for a snack. One of the new kids, eagerly grabs a cookie, puts it in his mouth to start eating, but his older brother grabs it and says, "No, you can't have that, you're allergic." Alright, in this scenario, what are we doing right? What is not being done right according to our Safe Church Action Plan? What should we change, and are there any next steps? Nathan.
The ratio is wrong. You have too many kids for volunteers. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to cancel the class if the teacher's not there, and or if you don't have enough teachers. Everything's wrong. You shouldn't step in, because that person probably didn't do their training. They haven't done this in a couple of years. We've only been doing this for a couple of years. So that person's terrible.
I think the one thing that was done right was at least that parent thought, no, I'm not going to go back to Dan's sermon. I'm going to stick around and not just abandon all these kids. That's maybe one piece that was done right. It was well-intentioned.
Another thing that was done right was there was a volunteer in that classroom, even though I don't know what the age group was for that classroom, but there was a volunteer in the classroom already.
Yeah. Excellent. Anyone else want to say? Oh, yeah.
And the other thing is the new family should be made aware that there's a registration process, and whoever the parents are that there should find the ministry coordinator.
Nobody's at attendance.
Katie has one.
Snack was given out before really looking at who had allergies.
No,
It's
Katie, come on. There you go. Good point. Good point. Yeah. Way better.
That's great. So there's not much going right and a whole lot going wrong. So the first thing, when you, in this story, you're coming out with your kinder-age child and then you sent him ahead of you into his class and you didn't stop, you kept on walking by to check on the next classroom. So he's a kinder-age kid, he needs to be signed in by a parent. That didn't happen. There's no sign of a floater checking on the classes, and they would have seen right away that we were missing a teacher.
No one got that one. Bad people.
You're all fired.
As Nathan said, a parent who is not a teacher decided to step in. While that sounds good, it's well-intentioned, you're right. They don't know the current policies and procedures for children's church. They're not familiar with the curriculum, they're not prepared to teach. They might not have a current police records check on file for Cornerstone, and they might not have undergone our training and screening process. They probably weren't wearing any Cornerstone ID since they actually weren't the teacher for that day. And as I said, there's probably more than the 1-to-9 ratio, no one took attendance. So the floater wasn't there. If the floater had been there, the floater could have stepped in to help satisfy that 1-to-9 ratio. But also, more importantly, the floater then could have gone to the ministry coordinator, found the ministry coordinator, hopefully if she was here, in the sanctuary and said, we have a situation where we're missing a teacher. And then the ministry coordinator could step out and take a look, and then the ministry coordinator has a decision to make. She can step into that class, she can, and teach it and take it over. Or then she can decide to cancel the class and say, you're not appropriately staffed today, you don't have adequate supervision, we're not prepared, maybe she's not able to step in. Or maybe it's happened a couple times already, we just need to say, no, we need to send the kids back to their parents' care in sanctuary.
If the ministry coordinator is not available, can the Sunday school coordinator make that call?
Well, the ministry
Can you
coordinator
repeat the
is
question?
Oh,
so
gotcha.
the question was, if the ministry coordinator wasn't available, can the Sunday school coordinator make that call? And the ministry coordinator is our terminology for the children's church coordinator. Yeah, just so I don't have to say children's church coordinator, youth coordinator.
Could she ask another trained teacher to step in for that morning? Like, if she herself couldn't or just didn't want to, like,
Yeah.
could she ask another trained teacher?
Yeah. So the question is, if you are there as a parent and there's no teacher, but you see someone who is a trained teacher on the rotation, you could ask if they are comfortable stepping in. They could do that. I am the Safe Church Action Plan administrator. As much as I can when I don't have other responsibilities, I go out with the kids when they are dismissed for kids or their church, and I check on the classes just to see, hey, there's a teacher, do you have the helpers that you need? And again, wait a couple minutes to do a quick head count to see how many kids we have. And sometimes I step in. Sometimes I step in to teach a class, or sometimes I step in to be an extra volunteer if that's needed. But I just wanted to point out that this happened a number of times last year where we didn't have the helpers, or we didn't have a teacher, or we didn't have any teacher or any helpers at all for either classes. This happened a number of times. And us as teachers and me in my role, we kept stepping in, and it happened at least 6 times, if not more, last year. And so that's when it gets to the point where we need to make a judgment call and say, no, that's up to the ministry coordinator, or if they're not there, then that will be up to me to say, okay, kids, unfortunately, I guess the teacher isn't here today, I'm not sure what happened, but we're going to head back to the sanctuary and you can sit with your parents. And then you, as a teacher, gave the kid something that he was allergic to. So that, of course, was not a good thing. Maybe that was because you didn't know or didn't think to ask the parent ahead of time when, hey, you're new, welcome to Cornerstone. Have you been here before? Have you filled in our registration forms? I'm not, this is my first time teaching your kids. Is there anything I need to know? Even if they have filled in a registration form, if it's your first time meeting those kids, you might not have seen that registration form to know that they have allergies. Just have that moment of face-to-face conversation to say, hey, is there anything I need to know? And of course, in the older elementary age class, you could also ask the kids themselves.
Would people know where to find the registration forms?
I don't know where Stacey has those, so no, I know she keeps saying it's online somewhere,
It's
but
online.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, that information about allergies and things like that, that should be available to the teachers and volunteers in the classroom, because it does no good if it's up here in the office.
Sure.
I think like in schools, it's posted on the classroom door, photos of the kids and what their specific allergies,
Yeah.
so then anybody can see.
Exactly, and that's a really good point. Yeah, that's something that we don't have yet, and this is great because I've lived and breathed this for 2 years, and my brain is like, yeah, I know what's in here, and I've done all the research, but then what's kind of real life application, and that's one of the benefits of having this kind of live training is that you guys come to us with all these situations, saying, oh, I've seen this happen before, or what about this situation? And then it helps us to kind of work out those situations, so that's an excellent idea.
Would you mind repeating it for the audio?
Jolene was just saying that at the schools, they have in each of the classrooms posted a sign with the kids' names and any specific thing that they are allergic to. So you are not relying on third-hand knowledge from someone else. You can see it yourself. You have all the current updated information, and that information is not inaccessible to you because it does no good if it's up here or on the computer, but you're downstairs. One thing for next steps is that the ministry coordinator could consider also coming out for the first few minutes of the class time as all the kids are getting settled into their classes, just to make sure that the classes are getting smoothly, and then they would be aware right away of any staffing shortages. So we're almost done. We have one more case study. Boys Club is having a glow-in-the-dark bowling night. As one of the volunteers, you handed the waiver forms the week before, and you explained they have to be completed for the boys to participate. The night of the event, lots of kids show up, more than you expect. There are 3 Cornerstone volunteers there, and as off the boys' names, a parent comes to you and says, hey, you're from Cornerstone Church, right? You're one of the supervisors for the boys' bowling night? As you're answering his questions, you see one of the Cornerstone boys running excitedly. Afterwards, you call him over and ask him for his completed waiver form. He sheepishly says, oh, I forgot it, and my dad has already left, but he can stay, right? His parents have known you a long time, and you've spent a lot of time together. You feel badly for him and know that his parents must have filled in the form or probably just left behind in the car, so you decide to let him stay, and you go to check with one of the other volunteers, and they tell you there are over 30 boys there tonight. You quickly divide into teams and begin funning the bowling. Partway through the last game, you notice one of the boys is missing. You quickly look around, you don't see him. You tell one of the volunteers, I'm going to go check in the washroom. When you get there, you find the boy, and he looks like he's been roughed up and he's very upset. You check him over to see how badly he's hurt. While he only has the scrapes and bruises, he's pretty shaken up. He tells you some older boys cornered him and stole his money. So what are we doing right? What's going on that's wrong? What changes do we make for the next steps?
They counted how many boys there were, and you said one of them was missing. You should never let him stay. Like, you should have contacted his parents before, and make sure that he had his phone running as well.
Sent out a waiver form the week before. That's very good.
The form should have been due before the night of the
Hallelujah. Yes. Very good. All right.
Nailed it.
So it's the last, they wait till the last moment of they needed to be in to make it the week before.
And then they make you feel bad.
It also doesn't sound like there's any true signing system, so all of those extra boys should never have been allowed to stay. The parents should have had to sign something, and on the spot that waiver should have been required.
The best thing they did was have a glow-in-the-dark bowl. And then lots of bad things happened from there. The ratio's wrong. That kid shouldn't have been able to get to the bathroom by themselves. Someone should have been responsible. And that's because the ratios were wrong.
Alright, one last, and then do a summary.
They should have called his parents.
Exactly. Very good. Very good. Excellent. Great. So you got most of the points. So we're doing a head count. We're taking attendance as kids come in. You're easily identifiable because you're wearing your Cornerstone shirt or your name tag or something. And you handed out the waivers beforehand and explained that we need those. So what's not right? You let the boy stay who did not have the completed waiver form. So you're right, there's potentially other boys that maybe showed up at the last minute without a waiver form, but in this situation, this one boy, you let him stay. So you made a personal judgment call. And that's what we're trying to avoid in 99% of the situations, hopefully, that we encounter. Our policy and our procedures, it's all going to be laid out for you. This is what we do in this situation. This is what you do in this situation. So if it's Nathan, or if it's Penny, or if it's Wendy, or if it's Steve, or if it's me, we would all react the same way. Because we know what the policy is, and we're all going to follow the policy. Because when we start to make exceptions and personal judgment calls, that's when things happen that we're trying to prevent. That's when kids can become vulnerable. That's when we're not kind of really fully in control and really properly supervising the situation. So we could consider maybe bringing extra waiver forms, blank forms, and having them with us. Certainly call the parent right away and say, I'm sorry, we need this waiver in order for your child to stay. If you didn't realize the boy was gone, he needs to ask you permission to go. And so what you would do in that situation is you would tell the other volunteer, hey, I'm just taking this kid to the bathroom, walk with him, pop your head in, you don't need to stay there, you're just being aware of the situation you're putting that child into. Let him use the bathroom, you wait outside, and then you would walk back together. And what would happen then in this situation is, it might not have completely prevented everything from happening, but that boy would have known that you were outside. He could have called and yelled for you to help. You were kind of being intentional about supervising him, even though you were outside the room. And you could have stepped in and intervened and prevented him possibly from being hurt, or hopefully keeping the whole situation from happening. Alright, so what we would do is we would provide first aid as necessary to the boy. So if there's cuts and bruises and scrapes, then chances are that's something that a few band-aids would take care of. You could ask the boy how he feels, if he would like to stay and continue and finish the night, or if he would like to try to go home right away. It might not be obvious to you kind of how badly he's feeling. You still call the parents and let them know, this happened unfortunately, this is how the situation your boy's in, this is how he's feeling, and you would let them know he would like to stay and continue if that's okay with you, he seems okay, or you would let them know, okay, he's really upset, or he's really feeling hurt, and he would like to be picked up right away if you're able to. They might not be able to, but at least you kind of relay that information to them. As soon as you're able to, then we fill in a report of accident or injury, and you call the ministry coordinator and you say, hey, we had this situation, just wanted you to know, I'm filling this report, I'll give it to you as soon as possible. Okay? So we're just about done. That is it for the bulk of our training. Does anyone have any last one or two questions before we go? Yes, Nathan.
Do we have a first aid kit and where is it?
Good question, Dan. Do you have a first aid kit and where is it?
I know we do somewhere.
Opposite the.
Marina knows.
Oh.
It's like opposite the girls' washrooms, so like right there by the whiteboard.
Excellent.
We have a second one.
Uh-huh.
Second first aid.
Joking.
So my question is, some places have a policy that if you open the first aid kit, you have to fill out an incident report. If it's like a paper cut, and you have to get a Band-Aid out of the first aid kit, do we have to fill out an incident report for that? Because some places need to keep track of how many Band-Aids are in there, and so forth.
I think for us, that's not written out in the policy, but I think we just kind of use common sense. I think I'm comfortable saying that. Just if kids especially, they're gonna get bumps and scrapes and little cuts and things all the time. So little kind of minor abrasions or things that need a Band-Aid, I don't think you need to fill in an incident report. If two kids are running around and they're horsing around and they bump heads, you really don't know exactly how serious that is. So even though it might seem to you like a minor thing, I would still fill in an incident report. They might not need anything more than ice on their head. Still call their parents, let them know this happened, and the parent can make the call of what they're comfortable with at that point. For every kind of individual use of a Band-Aid, we don't need to fill in an incident report. But if it is something that happened or that a situation led to, or perhaps kids weren't following the rules and then they led to a situation where a child got hurt, I would say a little bit more than what would require a Band-Aid. I don't know. That's a fairly vague kind of.
Their arm is hanging off.
Their arm is hanging. Dan says if their arm is hanging off, that is when we fill in an incident report. Okay. Is there any? We have time for one or two last questions, and then we do need to wrap up. Just we want to honor and respect our time. Yes, Penny.
Okay, I want to make two suggestions. I'd like to make two suggestions with respect to Children's Church. If on the attendance sheets, because I know they're prepared and typed up, might want to put allergies right on them because there's.
The kids have just been dismissed from the Sunday service to begin Children's Church. You take your underage kid out to take him to his class, but as you come out, you notice that it seems like there's a lot of kids just waiting around. You send your child ahead of you to go into his class, walk down the hall to check in on the next classroom. Only the young helper is there. There's no teacher and there's no visible sign of any lesson prep. You wait around a few minutes and you see more families and more kids come, but no teacher. You and another parent wonder who the teacher may be and what should you do if the teacher doesn't show up. You've taught children's church before, though not in a while, so you decide you can handle teaching the kids today. As you get the kids to sit down, you see there's a new family standing. They look puzzled in the doorway. You invite their kids in, ask them their names, and welcome them to the class. The parents ask you if you're the teacher and you have a few questions about children's church. You confess this is your first time teaching, and really you're only stepping in because there was no teacher that morning. They kind of look unsure as they slowly step back into the hall. You turn and notice you have three full tables of kids, so you quickly get their attention with a short story and some games. As the class time ends, you spy a box of cookies in the corner, so you grab it, hand those out for a snack. One of the new kids, eagerly grabs a cookie, puts it in his mouth to start eating, but his older brother grabs it and says, "No, you can't have that, you're allergic." Alright, in this scenario, what are we doing right? What is not being done right according to our Safe Church Action Plan? What should we change, and are there any next steps? Nathan.
The ratio is wrong. You have too many kids for volunteers. I'm pretty sure you're supposed to cancel the class if the teacher's not there, and or if you don't have enough teachers. Everything's wrong. You shouldn't step in, because that person probably didn't do their training. They haven't done this in a couple of years. We've only been doing this for a couple of years. So that person's terrible.
I think the one thing that was done right was at least that parent thought, no, I'm not going to go back to Dan's sermon. I'm going to stick around and not just abandon all these kids. That's maybe one piece that was done right. It was well intentioned.
Yeah. Another thing that was done right was there was a volunteer in that classroom, even though I don't know what the age group was for that classroom, but there was a volunteer in the classroom already.
Yeah. Excellent. Anyone else want to say? Oh, yeah.
And the other thing is that new families should be made aware that there's a registration process, and whoever the parents are that there should find the ministry coordinator.
Nobody's at attendance.
Katie has one.
Snack was given out before really looking at who had allergies.
No,
It's
Katie, come on. There you go.
Good point. Good point.
That was way better than Maple said.
Yeah. Way better.
That's right. So there's not much going right and a whole lot going wrong. So the first thing, when you, in this story, you're coming out with your kinder age child and then you sent him ahead of you into his class and you didn't stop, you kept on walking by to check on the next classroom. So he's a kinder age kid, he needs to be signed in by a parent. That didn't happen. There's no sign of a floater checking on the classes, and they would have seen right away that we were missing a teacher.
No one got that one. Bad people.
You're all fired.
As Nathan said, a parent who is not a teacher decided to step in. While that sounds good, it's well intentioned, you're right. They don't know the current policies and procedures for children's church. They're not familiar with the curriculum, they're not prepared to teach. They might not have a current police records check on file for Cornerstone, and they might not have undergone our training and screening process. They probably weren't wearing any Cornerstone ID since they actually weren't the teacher for that day. And as I said, there's probably more than the 1-to-9 ratio, no one took attendance. So the floor wasn't there. If the floor had been there, the floor could have stepped in to help satisfy that 1-to-9 ratio. But also, more importantly, the floor then could have gone to the ministry coordinator, found the ministry coordinator, hopefully if she was here, in the sanctuary and said, we have a situation where we're missing a teacher. And then the ministry coordinator could step out and take a look, and then the ministry coordinator has a decision to make. She can step into that class, she can, and teach it and take it over. Or then she can decide to cancel the class and say, you're not appropriately staffed today, you don't have adequate supervision, we're not prepared, maybe she's not able to step in. Or maybe it's happened a couple times already, we just need to say, no, we need to send the kids back to their parents' care in sanctuary.
If the ministry coordinator is not available, can the Sunday school coordinator make that call?
Well, the ministry
Can you
coordinator
repeat
is
the question?
So
gotcha.
the question was, if the ministry coordinator wasn't available, can the Sunday school coordinator make that call? And the ministry coordinator is just our terminology for the children's church coordinator. Yeah, just so I don't have to say children's church coordinator, youth coordinator.
Could she ask another trained teacher to step in for that morning? Like, if she herself couldn't or just didn't want to, like,
Yeah.
could she ask another trained teacher?
Yeah. So the question is, if you are there as a parent and there's no teacher, but you see someone who is a trained teacher on the rotation, you could ask if they are comfortable stepping in. They could do that. I am the Safe Church Action Plan administrator. As much as I can when I don't have other responsibilities, I go out with the kids when they are dismissed for kids for their church, and I check on the classes just to see, hey, there's a teacher, do you have the helpers that you need? And again, wait a couple minutes to do a quick head count to see how many kids we have. And sometimes I step in. Sometimes I step in to teach a class, or sometimes I step in to be an extra volunteer if that's needed. But I just wanted to point out that this happened a number of times last year where we didn't have the helpers, or we didn't have a teacher, or we didn't have any teacher or any helpers at all for either classes. This happened a number of times. And us as teachers and me in my role, we kept stepping in, and it happened at least 6 times, if not more, last year. And so that's when it gets to the point where we need to make a judgment call and say, no, that's up to the ministry coordinator, or if they're not there, then that will be up to me to say, okay, kids, unfortunately, I guess the teacher isn't here today, I'm not sure what happened, but we're going to head back to the sanctuary and you can sit with your parents. And then you, as a teacher, gave the kid something that he was allergic to. So that, of course, was not a good thing. Maybe that was because you didn't know or didn't think to ask the parent ahead of time when, hey, you're new, welcome to Cornerstone. Have you been here before? Have you filled in our registration forms? I'm not, this is my first time teaching their kids. Is there anything I need to know? Even if they have filled in a registration form, if it's your first time meeting those kids, you might not have seen that registration form to know that they have allergies. Just have that moment of face-to-face conversation to say, hey, is there anything I need to know? And of course, in the older elementary age class, you could also ask the kids themselves.
Would people know where to find the registration forms?
I don't know where Stacey has those, so no, I know she keeps saying it's online somewhere,
It's
but
online.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But that information about allergies and things like that, that should be available to the teachers and volunteers in the classroom, because it does no good if it's up here in the office.
Sure.
Yes, Jolene? I think like in schools, it's posted on the classroom door, photos of the kids and what their specific allergies,
Yeah.
so then anybody can see.
Exactly. And that's a really good point. Yeah, that's something that we don't have yet. And this is great because I've lived and breathed this for 2 years, and my brain is like, yeah, I know what's in here, and I've done all the research, but then what's kind of real life application, and that's one of the benefits of having this kind of live training, is that you guys come to us with all these situations, say, oh, I've seen this happen before, or what about this situation? And then it helps us to kind of work out those situations. So that's an excellent idea.
Would you mind repeating it for the audio?
Jolene was just saying that at the schools, they have in each of the classrooms posted a sign with the kids' names and any specific thing that they are allergic to. So you are not relying on third-hand knowledge from someone else. You can see it yourself. You have all the current updated information, and that information is not inaccessible to you, because it does no good if it's up here or on the computer, but you're downstairs. One thing for next steps is that the ministry coordinator could consider also coming out for the first few minutes of the class time, as all the kids are getting settled into their classes, just to make sure that the classes are beginning smoothly, and then they would be aware right away of any staffing shortages. We're almost done. We have one more case study. Boys Club is having a glow-in-the-dark bowling night. As one of the volunteers, you handed the waiver forms the week before, and you explained they have to be completed for the boys to participate. The night of the event, lots of kids show up, more than you expect. There are 3 Cornerstone volunteers there, and as the boys' names, a parent comes to you and says, hey, you're from Cornerstone Church, right? You're one of the supervisors for the boys' bowling night? As you're answering his questions, you see one of the Cornerstone boys running excitedly. Afterwards, you call him over and ask him for his completed waiver form. He sheepishly says, oh, I forgot it, and my dad has already left, but he can stay, right? His parents have known you a long time, and you've spent a lot of time together. You feel badly for him and know that his parents must have filled in the form and probably just left behind in the car, so you decide to let him stay. And you go to check with one of the other volunteers, and they tell you there are over 30 boys there tonight. You quickly divide into teams and begin funny to bowling. Partway through the last game, you notice one of the boys is missing. You quickly look around, you don't see him. You tell one of the volunteers, I'm going to go check in the washroom. When you get there, you find the boy, and he looks like he's been roughed up and he's very upset. You check him over to see how badly he's hurt. While he only has some scrapes and bruises, he's pretty shaken up. He tells you some older boys cornered him and stole his money. So what are we doing right? What's going on that's wrong? What changes do we make for the next steps?
They counted how many boys there were, and you said one of them was missing. You should never let him stay. Like, you should have contacted his parents before, and make sure that he had his phone running as well.
Sent out a waiver form the week before. That's very good.
The form should have been due before the night of the
Hallelujah. Yes. Very good. All right.
Nailed it.
It's always the last thing, wait till the last moment of they needed to be in. So make it the week before.
And then they make you feel bad.
It also doesn't sound like there's any true signing system, so all of those extra boys should never have been allowed to stay. The parents should have had to sign something on the spot. That waiver should have been required.
The best thing they did was have a glow-in-the-dark bowling net. And then lots of bad things happened from there. The ratio's wrong. That kid shouldn't have been able to get to the bathroom by themselves. Someone should have been responsible. And that's because the ratios were wrong.
All right, one last, and then do a summary.
They should have called his parents.
Exactly. Very good. Very good. Excellent.
Great, so you got most of the points. So we're doing a head count, we're taking attendance as kids come in. You're easily identifiable because you're wearing your Cornerstone shirt or your name tag or something. And you handed out the waivers beforehand and explained that we need those. So what's not right? You let the boy stay who did not have the completed waiver form. So you're right, there's potentially other boys that maybe showed up at the last minute without a waiver form, but in this situation, this one boy, you let him stay. So you made a personal judgment call. And that's what we're trying to avoid in 99% of the situations, hopefully, that we encounter. Our policy and our procedures, it's all going to be laid out for you. This is what we do in this situation. This is what you do in this situation. So if it's Nathan, or if it's Penny, or if it's Wendy, or if it's Steve, or if it's me, we would all react the same way. Because we know what the policy is, and we're all going to follow the policies. Because when we start to make exceptions and personal judgment calls, that's when things happen that we're trying to prevent. That's when kids can become vulnerable. That's when we're not kind of really fully in control and really properly supervising the situation. So we could consider maybe bringing extra waiver forms, blank forms, and having them with us. Certainly call the parent right away and say, I'm sorry, we need this waiver in order for your child to stay. If you didn't realize the boy was gone, he needs to ask you permission to go. And so what you would do in that situation is you would tell the other volunteer, hey, I'm just taking this kid to the bathroom, walk with him, pop your head in, you don't need to stay there, you're just being aware of the situation you're putting that child into. Let him use the bathroom, you wait outside, and then you would walk back together. And what would happen then in this situation is, it might not have completely prevented everything from happening, but that boy would have known that you were outside. He could have called and yelled for you to help. You were kind of being intentional about supervising him, even though you were outside the room. And you could have stepped in and intervened and prevented him possibly from being hurt, or hopefully even the whole situation from happening. Alright, so what we would do is we would provide first aid as necessary to the boy. So if this cuts and bruises and scrapes, then chances are that's something that a few band-aids would take care of. You could ask the boy how he feels, if he would like to stay and continue and finish the night, or if he would like to try to go home right away. It might not be obvious to you kind of how badly he's feeling. You still call the parents and let them know, this happened unfortunately, this is how the situation your boy is in, this is how he's feeling, and you would let them know he would like to stay and continue if that's okay with you. He seems okay, or you would let them know, okay, he's really upset, or he's really feeling hurt, and he would like to be picked up right away if you're able to. They might not be able to, but at least you kind of relay that information to them. As soon as you're able to, then we fill in a report of accident or injury, and you call the ministry coordinator and you say, hey, we had this situation, just wanted you to know, I'm filling in this report, I'll give it to you as soon as possible. Okay? So we're just about done. That is it for the bulk of our training. Does anyone have any last one or two questions before we go? Yes, Nathan.
Do we have a first aid kit and where is it?
Good question, Dan. Do we have a first aid kit and where is it?
I know we do somewhere.
Opposite the.
Oh.
It's like opposite the girls' washroom, so like right there by the whiteboard.
Excellent.
We have a second one.
Uh-huh.
Second first aid.
Joking.
So my question is, some places have a policy that if you open the first aid kit, you have to fill out an incident report. If it's like a big prep, and you have to get a Band-Aid out of the first aid kit, do we have to fill out an incident report for that? Because some places need to keep track of how many Band-Aids are in there, and so forth.
I think for us, that's not written out in the policy, but I think we just kind of use common sense. I think I'm comfortable saying that. Just if kids especially, they're gonna get bumps and scrapes and little cuts and things all the time. So little kind of minor abrasions or things that need a Band-Aid, I don't think you need to fill in an incident report. If two kids are running around and they're horsing around and they bump heads, you really don't know exactly how serious that is. So even though it might seem to you like a minor thing, I would still fill in an incident report. They might not need anything more than ice on their head. Still call their parents, let them know this happened, and the parent can make the call of what they're comfortable with at that point. For every kind of individual use of a Band-Aid, we don't need to fill in an incident report. But if it is something that happened or that a situation led to, or perhaps kids weren't following the rules and then they led to a situation where a child got hurt, I would say a little bit more than what would require a Band-Aid. I don't know. That's a fairly vague kind of.
Their arm is hanging off.
Their arm is hanging. Dan says if their arm is hanging off, that is when we fill in an incident report. Okay. Is there any? We have time for one or two last questions, and then we do need to wrap up. Just we want to honor and respect your time. Yes, Penny.
Okay, I want to make two suggestions. Okay. I'd like to make two suggestions with respect to Children's Church. If on the attendance sheets, because I know they're prepared and typed up, you might want to put allergies right on them because there's circling through. I think that would be really good. And the other thing is, again, with respect to all the groups, since there are registration forms that have been prepared by the parents, I think that there should be copies with the ministry. So, and I don't know if that would be inappropriate, but a file folder in the green room for that room, a file folder in the nursery, a file folder in, you know what I mean? So that if there is contact to be made, I don't know, I know most of the children that are in the group that I'm teaching, know to put a name to each of their parents, although I know the floaters usually do.
Great.
That's good, yeah, I think that's something we had talked about earlier, was that it's up to the ministry coordinators, their responsibility to make sure that they have the parents' names and contact information ready, but yeah, so for children's church, that would be a nursery, we should have that information immediately accessible to our volunteers. Hey, we need to get a hold of this kid's parents, what are their names? Okay, so that, there's nothing kind of stopping that. Okay, I'm just going to say a few more things and then we will be dismissed for today. Thank you all so much for joining us and participating and being actually such active participants. That's awesome.
Yeah, you.
So, if after today there are some things that you're unsure of, or if you read through your materials and there's some things that you don't understand fully, please feel free to come and find me at any point. It could be kind of just a general what if question, or it could be a specific, I have a situation, I'm not sure how we should have approached it. If it's something that I can easily point out in the policy and say, yep, we have something that covers that right here, I'll do that. It might be something that we haven't thought of, and I'll have to say, hey, I might have to get back to you on that, and I'll kind of do whatever research I need to do, or talk with them and say, what about this situation, what do you think we should set as our standard, and we'll get back to you. So before we head out, we're going to make sure, please, everyone check to make sure that you have signed in so we have a complete record of today's attendance. I also at the back have a list of people that I need a volunteer application form completed. So please take one of those with you. And also I have a list of people that I need a current police records check from. Please, we need to get that done as soon as possible. You can do it online. If you reside within Ottawa, if you need the cover letter from the church saying you're applying for a volunteer position, you can just let me know and I will email that to you so you can upload that with your application. If you reside outside of Ottawa, you need to take that in and physically do it at your local police station. And lastly, before you leave, we have an individual assessment tool. Dan, would you mind handing those out? It is they're straightforward questions, just to assess, do you have a good understanding of our Save Church Action Plan, or can you at least find it in our policy if you need to? Make sure, please, that you write your name on the top of that as well, so that we have that on record. And once you're done that, you can hand that in at the back. You're free to go. Please do make sure that you take one of the children's or youth summary pages home with you for whatever program you volunteer with. If you would like, you can take a copy of the whole document home, the whole Save Church Action Plan. But we ask that the training manuals stay at the church. We'll use them again next year.
Extras? Would you like us to remove these?
Thanks, everyone.
Yay, Juliana.